If you look carefully, my machine is in dark mode, but you'll see no dark colon anywhere. And if you're used to writing Tailwind, you know that that's the way you declare dark mode. But I'm tired of writing dark colon and switching everything on every single thing I have to write a color for. Well, you don't have to do that anymore. There's actually a way to use CSS variables to swap between things based on your system preferences. And I'll even show you how you can set up a toggle between various themes, light mode, dark mode, and any other mode you want to let people swap out the colors. And all you have to do is write your base colors for light mode or whatever your default happens to be. Now there's a link in the description to the starting code, and then you can actually grab the finished code from a new branch. I'll let you figure that out, but for now, let's look at the only right way to write dark mode classes in Tailwind CSS. Hey, what's up? My name is Chris, and welcome to Coding in Public. Here I've got a React project open, and you don't need to know React to follow along. As long as you know Tailwind, you should be good. But you can see I've got a background color on my basic app and text color that's default. So I've got my background and content. Both of those are custom variables that I'll show you in a second. And then I'm switching them on dark mode. So dark colon, whatever the content I want it to be. Same thing with the text. I'm switching that to a background color. So that all works. And if I jump over to dark mode with my system machine, you can see how it swaps over. So that's fine and good. However, I don't want to have to remember to write dark colon every single time, and you don't have to. In fact, there's another way to write these dark mode classes that's super useful and basically means you just have to write this everywhere and just worry about light mode or worry about dark mode and let it switch one way or the other. So here I've got this set up. I'm going to jump over here, and you'll see that we can use CSS variables instead of using those dark directives. Now, they're not actually showing you for light and dark mode here. They're just showing you how you can basically use variables. That's one of the things I've always hated about working with Tailwind is I really want to keep my CSS variables because I just love working with them so much. And now you can do that, and one of the use cases I found is for dark and light mode. So what I've got is these custom colors set up over this way. I've got an accent 1 and an accent 2, and I've also got a background and a content. So these are custom colors like you might have for any design system. What I'm going to do is just swap out a couple steps. So the very first thing is to make sure that these are an HSL or that they're an RGBA. It seems like that's what you need to have in order for this to work properly, at least the way that they're showing it. Then what I'm going to do is on the layer of base, I'm going to declare a root, which is the same as the HTML, and just declare my custom variables. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to jump over to my index.css page and drop this in. And then we'll change this to background, and I'll change this to content since those were my two. I can also switch up the accent 1 and accent 2. So I can say accent 1 perhaps, and say accent 2. Now you'll notice all I have to do is actually put the values in here. Now you'll notice I'm not wrapping them in HSL or RGB. I'm just adding the actual values there. So for instance, for me, I'm going to use HSL. So if I scroll down here, you'll see that I'm actually declaring them like this: degrees, percentage, and percentage. All right. And if I was doing RGB, it would just be the bare values. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to jump back over here to my Tailwind config, and I'm just going to grab all of these one after the other. I'm using a tool here called PasteSpot, so I can grab these one after the other and drop them in. And I'll come back over here. Accent 1, accent 2, let's add those right there. Now we'll go background and we'll go color content. Okay, so with all those said, let's get rid of these HSLs. I'll grab the first one, hit Command-Shift-L and get rid of all those. Jump to the end and we should be set there. Now I do need to add degree and all these, so let me do that as well. Okay, so now we should be set to go. And now what I can do is reference these. And if I come down this way, you'll see how we should do that. So you see what they're saying is just under the colors object, like you normally would, declare your colors you're going to use. Except in this case, what we're going to do is now wrap that variable in the HSL wrapper and then include an alpha value. Now this comes from Tailwind, and it allows you to do opacity on these as well. So right now we're just trying to kind of get it back up to par the way it was working before we started messing around with stuff. So I'm going to grab all these here, and now I'm going to jump over to my Tailwind config and replace these. So what I'll do is take this right here, and I'm just going to change this to color background. And then let's actually copy this down just to make it a little bit faster. And I'll switch both of these out with Command D to color content. And same thing here. So we'll add this, and this will be accent 1. Copy this down, and this will be accent 2. Now, if we did that all correctly, and let me make sure I've saved this over here as well, I should be able to come over here and everything should look the exact same. Now you'll notice my colors aren't showing up, and I think that's because they were prefixed like this: color accent 1 and color accent 2. So if I save that, now they're showing up, and that's kind of a rotating gradient behind all that. Okay, so everything is kind of back to how it was working, but the advantage of declaring these as CSS variables is now it's very easy to basically take in the user's preferences and swap it from dark mode to light mode. So for instance, I could just write a media query inside here that says whenever the user prefers color scheme and I go dark, then what I want to do is basically swap these on the root. So let's just grab this right here, pop this in here. And in this case, what I want to do is take this and drop it right here and take this and drop it right below. So I'm just swapping those two values. Now, I also might want to take this down a notch. So let's take this to like 60 and maybe 40. And now if I switch my machine to dark mode, you're going to see that that's exactly what we get. Now that might not quite be right with those background colors, but you can see how I'm just going to basically take in the user's preference and swap the two values. And now the best part is I don't have to write dark colon everywhere all over my entire system. I control it in one place, and that is right here. These control all of my colors, and then I just pass them in this way. The reason we've added this alpha value once again is so that we can use some opacity. So if I jump back over this way, you're going to notice that I've got a background accent 1 with opacity of 80. So if I change this to 40, you'll see that that changed that color and made it way more opaque. So it's still allowing it to use all the kind of beauties of Tailwind, but I get to define everything using CSS variables. Now you don't just have to use the system preference. You could also set it up to where somebody has like a toggle and you switch it back and forth between light and dark mode, that would override whatever their default system preference is. Or you could have multiple themes. So you could have a dark mode, a light mode, whatever. So for instance, what I would do in that case is come in here and say that on the root, if the root had like a data theme and I set this to something like dark, then I would also overwrite this. So even if they don't have their system in dark mode, I would also want it to be this exact same thing. But you're not limited to just dark mode. I could come in here and say if it was like, I don't know, like cool or whatever, then it would also be that. So the way this would work is you'd have some kind of toggle switch, and what you would do is just set on the actual HTML itself. If I can pull this down and let's zoom in a touch. So if I would just set a data value right here. So data, what do we call that? Data theme. And I would set this to something like dark, so that even if their system is not in dark mode, if this has a data theme on the root itself, on the HTML, then it basically is going to use these colors instead. And I could switch these up. Let's make this like something obvious just so you can see that it switches. This is going to look really bad, but here we go. Okay, so now if I switch this up and I say it's cool, like this, now I have a third theme. All right, so I've got light mode, dark mode, and cool mode, which is impossible to see, but you get the point. So isn't that awesome? You don't have to write dark colon everywhere. This is the way to write dark mode or any other themed mode in Tailwind. I hope this was a big help to you, and just as a little reminder that CSS variables are awesome. Even if you use Tailwind, use those variables. All right, I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Happy coding.